season, these type of numbers, and then we're probably not going to be even in the play-in game.
JJ Redick announced a couple days ago that LeBron James is done.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they went from second best record in the sport to under 500.
But sometimes as a man, you have to make decisions based on your well-being, right? And I made that decision based on me and my own happiness.
Something feels off around the Lakers right now, and the silence coming from certain franchise legends is somehow making the noise even louder. Because when Magic Johnson decides to post something about culture, leadership, and doing things the right way, right in the middle of another wave of LeBron-related headlines, people don't just read the words, they read the timing, and that timing is exactly what turned this into a real story. The Lakers were already deep in some heavy conversations, questions about leadership dynamics, off-season tension, roster direction, and where this organization is actually headed. Then Magic steps into the picture with a message that a lot of fans immediately felt was carrying more weight than it appeared to on the surface. He didn't mention LeBron by name, he didn't point a finger at anyone directly, but sometimes that restraint speaks louder than a direct call-out would. Because when someone with Magic Johnson's history with this franchise starts talking about culture, sacrifice, and team identity, people know there's usually something deeper behind it than a casual social media post. And this isn't happening in isolation. Over the past several years, the Lakers have been consistently caught between two timelines pulling in opposite directions. On one side, there's the LeBron James championship window, every decision filtered through the lens of maximizing the remaining years of an all-time great still performing at an elite level. On the other side, there's the long-term future of the franchise. What does the organization look like after LeBron? Who becomes the face of the Lakers next? And does the front office still operate with the kind of structure and autonomy that defined the franchise before superstar-driven decision-making reshaped the entire league? That tension has been simmering for a while, but recently it feels like it's reached a different level. The reactions surrounding LeBron have become more emotional, more symbolic, and more tied to bigger questions about the organization itself. A cryptic Instagram post becomes a breaking news headline. A report about internal dissatisfaction becomes front-page analysis. A rumor about roster frustration gets amplified across every platform because at this point, people aren't just debating basketball, they're debating power inside one of the most iconic franchises in the history of the sport. And there's a version of this conversation that nobody really wants to have openly. Some fans have reached a point where they feel that for the good of everyone involved, including LeBron himself, this needs to be the final chapter. Nobody wants to watch a version of LeBron James that's disengaged, playing through questionable injuries, or going through the motions on a team that's stuck in neutral. Anyone who grew up watching the tail end of Michael Jordan's time with the Washington Wizards understands exactly what that looks like, and nobody wants that for LeBron's legacy. Magic Johnson understands that reality better than almost anyone still connected to this league. He doesn't just represent Lakers history, he represents the standard that Lakers fans hold every single era up against. Showtime basketball, internal accountability, star power operating within an organizational structure, not above it. So when Magic says anything that even suggests concern about the current culture, fans immediately connected to everything happening around LeBron and the direction of the franchise right now. And here's the conversation that keeps getting avoided. The Lakers culture debate is ultimately a debate about control. Who actually defines this organization today? Is it still the front office and ownership setting the direction, or has the franchise completely shifted into superstar-led decision-making, the way so many modern NBA teams have? Because every time friction surfaces around LeBron, whether it's about roster construction, coaching dynamics, or subtle messages sent through social media, the conversation always comes back to the same central question. How much influence should one player have over the identity of a franchise that existed long before he arrived and will continue long after he's gone?
I feel sorry for LeBron to put up this type of season, these type of numbers, and then we're probably not going to be even in the play-in game. this was a wasted season for him. And we can't waste seasons, Greeny, with LeBron James. You know, how many great seasons does he have left? And so we got to put a team around him that can compete for a championship.
That is why Magic's
That's exactly why Magic's words landed the way they did. This wasn't some retired player tossing out generic advice about the game. This is the man who helped build what the Lakers brand actually means. When Magic talks about culture, fans don't just hear basketball commentary, they hear legacy, they hear expectation. They hear the idea that putting on a Lakers jersey has always been supposed to represent something larger than any one individual's agenda. And whether Magic intended it that way or not, that message becomes a natural contrast point every single time LeBron-related drama starts trending. What makes this even more layered is that Magic has publicly supported LeBron plenty of times before. He's called him a Lakers legend. He's defended his greatness without hesitation. He's acknowledged what it meant for LeBron to deliver a championship to Los Angeles in 2020, and even fans who were resistant at first eventually came around on that. Winning a title in a Laker uniform settled that part of the argument. LeBron's place in franchise history is no longer seriously debated. What is being debated now is whether the identity of the Lakers during the LeBron era has genuinely aligned with what this organization has traditionally stood for. And once that question enters the conversation, everything shifts. It's no longer just about wins and losses. Suddenly, people are examining leadership, accountability, effort, locker room chemistry, and long-term organizational direction. Every action gets filtered through a new lens. A cryptic post from LeBron gets read as frustration with the front office. A message from Magic about standards and sacrifice gets read as a subtle critique of modern player influence. The entire environment becomes saturated with interpretation rather than direct communication. And recent years have only made that worse. Coaching changes, roster overhauls, inconsistent playoff performances, recurring injury concerns, and relentless media speculation have all added layers to an already complicated picture. Some moves worked, others clearly didn't. And because LeBron is who he is, every single decision gets tied to his presence, fairly or not. When the team wins, his leadership gets the credit. When the team falls short, critics question whether the franchise gave up too much structural stability in pursuit of his championship window. Magic's message dropped right into the center of that charged environment, which is precisely why the reaction was so immediate and so strong. To be fair, though, LeBron's side of this conversation deserves equal weight. Despite all the noise and criticism, he has continued performing at a historically impressive level deep into the later stages of his career. Some fans have even drawn comparisons between this version of LeBron and Magic Johnson's own late career style. Slower pace, sharper basketball IQ, controlling the flow of a game through vision and decision-making rather than relying on raw athleticism. That comparison alone reveals just how complicated this whole discussion is. You have two men who are now being mentioned in the same breath in terms of style, while simultaneously being positioned on opposite sides of a cultural debate about the franchise they both love. There's also the question of what comes next. The Lakers appear to be building toward a future centered around Luka Doncic as the face of the franchise once LeBron's chapter closes. And Magic himself has publicly suggested that LeBron's professionalism and experience could have a genuinely positive influence on Luka's development during this transitional period. So now you have overlapping timelines, overlapping legacies, and overlapping leadership questions, all converging at the same moment. That's what gives Magic's comments so much weight right now. They're arriving at a point where the franchise is visibly trying to honor everything LeBron's era produced, while simultaneously preparing for whatever identity comes after him. That's a delicate balance under any circumstances. And here's where it becomes genuinely risky. Once culture conversations go public in the NBA, they almost never stay contained.
Fans start picking sides. Former players begin weighing in with carefully worded statements. Media personalities dissect every quote for hidden meaning. And from the outside, the organization starts to look fractured, even if internally things are far more stable than they appear. That's the real danger of vague messaging in today's media environment. A significant part of what keeps this debate alive is nostalgia. Lakers fans don't all remember the franchise the same way because they didn't all fall in love with it at the same time. Some grew up watching Magic Johnson orchestrate Showtime basketball, and that era became their permanent definition of what the Lakers are supposed to be. Others came of age during the Kobe years, a different standard entirely, built on relentless intensity, individual greatness, and a refusal to accept anything less than a championship. And then there's a generation of fans who entered during the LeBron era and see him as the star who brought the franchise back into genuine relevance after years of irrelevance and delivered a title to Los Angeles in 2020. Each generation carries a different definition of Lakers culture, which means no current era, no matter how successful, will ever fully satisfy every corner of the fan base at once. But what never changes in Los Angeles is the weight of expectation. Winning one championship doesn't buy goodwill forever. With the Lakers, it simply raises the bar for what comes next. That's why every early playoff exit feels catastrophic rather than disappointing. That's why every roster flaw becomes national debate material almost immediately. And that's why a single post from Magic Johnson can still send shockwaves through the entire NBA conversation without him uttering a single direct accusation. The reality, if anyone is willing to sit with it honestly, is more complicated than either side tends to acknowledge. LeBron has undeniably elevated the Lakers during his time here. He restored the franchise to championship relevance and performed at an extraordinary level well into his late career. At the same time, Magic represents a version of Lakers' identity rooted in organizational structure, shared sacrifice, and team-first culture. And critically, both of those things can be true simultaneously. LeBron's contributions don't cancel out the cultural tension, and the cultural tension doesn't erase what LeBron accomplished. The problem is that the modern NBA media environment has very little patience for that kind of nuance. Nuance doesn't generate clicks, conflict does, emotional interpretation does. So every vague message gets sharpened into a headline, and every headline deepens the divide between people who were already looking for a reason to pick a side. Because what people are really reacting to isn't just one cryptic social media post, they're reacting to years of accumulated tension, a slow buildup of questions, frustrations, and unresolved debates about what the Lakers are now versus what they believe the Lakers are supposed to be. That gap between expectation and reality has been quietly widening for years, and now it's hard to ignore. When LeBron's era with the Lakers finally comes to a close, that question isn't going to quietly disappear. It's going to demand an answer. Right now, the franchise is standing at a crossroads between two distinct identities, and no one has fully resolved which direction it's heading. Magic Johnson just made sure the entire basketball world remembers that the conversation is still very much open.